With both Arkansans on board, is the U.S. Senate's Republican majority giving both parties added ammo for November? It's a dynamic in play at the top of both tickets, but down ballot as well, perhaps even for an office that doesn't consider judicial seats. Also in this edition, expanding access in Arkansas to a service that's vital to most every aspect of contemporary life, and that includes health care. How fast can high speed become statewide? Arkansas Week, coming up.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
And hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. The information superhighway through Arkansas has some potholes, some incomplete segments, and in some areas, construction hasn't begun. Efforts are underway to change that, and we'll go to that story in just a few minutes. First, the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the high-speed campaign for a successor. That the president will nominate is beyond question. That a Republican Senate will confirm seems rather probable. So, that aside, what's the impact, if any, on our politics here? To kick that around, political consultants Bill Vickery from the right and Michael Cook from the left. Gents, thanks very much for coming in. Bill, we'll begin with you. Obviously, there is material here in the Ginsburg situation, Supreme Court situation, that would energize both parties. To what extent yours? Who benefits the most?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Steve. Look, both sides want this issue to dominate the month of October. These are obviously lifetime appointments. These issues play to the base in both parties. I think it will crystallize the presidential campaign. I think you'll see both candidates cling to this issue. I think it will dominate the debate that's coming up, the first debate. I think it's one of those issues that it is more than the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It will be because we'll see theater on the inside the Senate judiciary. I think what both sides want is they want a robust hearing to take a week or 10 days. They want to debate all these issues and talk about the future. You will hear the phrase, the most important presidential election in history, thrown around a great deal. But at the end of the day, as you point out, the Republican majority is going to confirm a justice at some point in time, probably after Election Day.
Yeah. Michael Cook, to what extent, if any, should Mr. Trump be careful what he wishes for in terms of dominating the debate?
Right. Well, I think that's a great point you raised, Steve, because the Supreme Court debate, we already know what's going to happen. The Republicans have the vote. They're going to push it through either prior to the election day or after the election day. It's just simple math. But in terms of be careful what you wish for, it allows the Democrats and Joe Biden specifically to be talking about health care and the Affordable Care Act, which is coming before the Supreme Court. They're going to be voting on it soon after Election Day. And there are millions of Americans who rely on this act for the health care. In fact, in Arkansas, we have hundreds of thousands. I'm one of them. I'm personally worried that if this is struck down, will I be able to get affordable health care? So I think, there's two things. One, we kind of know, we don't know who the nominee is going to be for the Supreme Court seat, but we know they're more than likely, you can almost bet the mortgage of the house that the Republicans will get it through. But then second of all, I think this does crystallize the debate over health care, because it's something that every American has an opinion on and relies on in some form or fashion. So it's going to be a big fight, but I do think in some ways, it won't be the biggest thing that we still debate, because we still have COVID. We still have an economy that is very sluggish. We still have unrest. So this just sort of adds more. I don't think it becomes the focal point for the entire presidential campaign, but it definitely adds more drama to the ongoing presidential election.
Yeah, Bill, Mike has a point. Or how big a point does Michael have there? I mean, you're asking a lot, are you not, Bill, when you think that the Supreme Court situation will dominate the entire month of October? It's got some stiff competition.
It certainly does. And frankly, I think for Republicans, you very much want to see the focus go back on a lot of these riots that have been taking place. It presents a clear contrast, especially through the industrial Midwest, between the two styles of candidates and who's on what side. And so to some degree, I know Republicans would like to go back to that and hold a mirror up to that and say, this is what we're keeping away from you there in the industrial Midwest. And oh, by the way, we're the only candidate that can keep the economy moving in the right direction from when we've had to shut down. So it does take away from both of those issues. I do think, though, we're underestimating the fact that these hearings they are perfect made for television events. And frankly, that's all that they are now. Let's be clear. These aren't hearings in the traditional sense anymore. These are television programs. That's why you see, out of work actors and actresses sitting in the crowd and doing these kinds of things. And so I think that'll play a big role because that fills up the day for a lot of these cable networks. And then they talk about it at night.
Michael Cook.
Well, I think I would take issue with what Bill said in the regards of, we've had unrest all over the summer and the early fall, and yet Biden still leads the way. All this unrest is happening under Trump's America. This is under Trump's watch. If he can't fix the problem now, what is another 4 years going to get him? In Minnesota, Wisconsin, Biden still is leading in all the polls. We have this choice becomes crystallized, to kind of paraphrase what Ronald Reagan said in 1980. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And I think the majority of Americans say no. We are not better off now. Our businesses are failing because of COVID. The federal government failed, and people died that should not have died because of the incompetence of Trump and the Republicans. And the economy, people are unemployed. There are a lot of Arkansas families that are hurting right now because of the incompetence of Trump and the Republican Party to not get ahead of COVID, to not do what needed to get done. And you had our governor, Asa Hutchinson, had to compete with other states at the beginning of this just to get basic medical equipment, the PPE that these nurses and other doctors rely upon. He was having to fight and try to outbid other states. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So this all comes back to, I think, voters in these states. They say, we're tired of this. We're not better off than we were 4 years ago. Trump has been an absolute disaster. We're stuck right now. We can't even, because of the incompetence, we're having to do this in our own homes because of the just absolute corruption and incompetence of Trump and the Republicans. They can't get anything right. They'd mess up a two-car parade. I think that's what it comes down to. There's clear choice. I think that's why Biden is clearly leading the polls and will win this thing on Election Day.
Well, Bill, I know you're not going to take all that lying down, but still, let me move on to another issue.
Yeah.
Let's bring it a little bit closer to home. What is likely to be the fallout, the impact on the race that everyone now seems to be concentrating on, and that's the 2nd District. Mr. Hill versus Senator Elliott.
Yeah. Listen, I think, again, that this is a case where the issue of Supreme Court nominees will be used. How effective it will be is a little bit unclear. I think at the end of the day, this is still a Republican district. I think French Hill wins. I think he clearly wants to talk about China. He clearly wants to talk about these riots. He clearly wants to talk about how the economy is turning and to take a little bit of issue. I think Republicans want to put the spotlight on what's happened in Seattle and Portland. And I think that's what you see the Hill campaign wanting to do, to say, look, the more hard left, super left-wing politicians you send to Washington, the closer that's going to creep into your backyard. And I clearly think that's what they want to talk about. I can guarantee you that the Elliott campaign will use the Supreme Court issue to raise money with. That's another issue that we're really not talking about, is the level of fundraising that will occur on the Supreme Court issue on both sides. I think we really can't truly quantify it just yet, but you'll see a lot of organizations raise money on that. I think at the end of the day, this is a Hill victory. He goes back to Congress. I think the numbers just don't stack up. We can talk about it, and in some ways, I think we want to make it into a race because it is such a sleepy year in Arkansas politics. But this is advantage Hill because while the Supreme Court issue is important, I don't think it dominates that congressional race as much as, say, in other parts of the country that are genuine swing districts.
Yeah, Michael Cook, your candidate seems to be running quite strong. Democratic nominees always run quite strong in Pulaski, but he's got 6 other counties to worry about.
True, but I would point out that Talk Business at Hendrix College just released a poll about 10 days ago or so and showed this race to be neck and neck. This should not be a close race. This is going to be a fight to the finish. Joyce Elliott's running a very strong campaign focusing on healthcare, her career as a public school educator, the things she's fought for in the state Senate. And when you have an incumbent, I forget the exact numbers, I think it was about 2 points or so that Hill was leading. It should not be this close. And in fact, I would point that French Hill's problems are also tied to Donald Trump's. That Talk Business poll showed that Biden was actually winning in the 2nd congressional district, a district that Hillary Clinton lost last time around. So, I won't go on and predict, who wins or who loses this seat, but I think this is going to be a fight to the finish with Joyce running a very, very smart issue-focused campaign focusing on healthcare, education policy, and her lifetime career of educating our kids. It's going to be a fun battle to watch if you're a political observer or junkie.
All right, Bill, we've got about 2 minutes left for the junkies in the audience. I'll give you half of it.
Well, in terms of the congressional race, Steve?
Or anything. What's on? Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I think this. I think it will be interesting. We have a month in front of us, basically, where you see about 5 states. We're back to the same old playbook again. The industrial Midwest, Big Ten country, where they're now going to play college football. Those are the states, and I think Michael would agree. It's Michigan, it's Pennsylvania, it's Wisconsin. It's possibly Minnesota to a degree now. And that's why I say you see these issues. The Trump campaign wins when they're able to hold a mirror up to the hard left and say, look, America, I'm the only thing standing between this and them coming for you with pitchforks and torches. And they win when they're able. Trump wins when he's able to make that kind of contrast because it's a very, very real threat. If you don't believe that, all you have to look at people who are running Biden's campaign. And at the end of the day, with all due respect to the former vice president who's had a long career, I mean, he clearly has had something happen to him, and he clearly is not cognitively as alert as he used to be, and it's painfully obvious. So this is talk about a Manchurian candidate for the hard left. That's what you're really looking at in Biden, and I think Trump gets an opportunity to display that over the next month.
Michael Cook, you look almost Ukrainian in that new beard of yours there. What's
Right. Well, I would say that Bill Vickery is making the exact same mistake Democrats made back in 2000 against George Bush. They said, oh, he's not smart enough. He's not up to the job. He just is, there's not something right there. And then debates came up, and then clearly, Bush, crossed the bar. That's Republicans are making the same mistake. They're setting the bar so low that all that Biden needs to do on the debate coming up next week is just barely walk across it. So all in all, I think it's going to come down to I think Biden's going to do well in the debate. But one last thing to bring it back to Arkansas for a moment, I think we're going to see some Democratic, I don't know how many, but because of Trump's wins the state, but some of his unpopularity in key areas, I think Democrats are going to have a shot at flipping some legislative seats to kind of very slowly start chipping away at the supermajority the Republicans hold. But we'll know November 3rd is right around the corner.
Good conversation, guys. Thanks to you. Michael Cook, Bill Vickery, thanks very much for coming in. We'll have you back soon. And we'll be right back. And we're back. Perhaps the most important thing about broadband service in Arkansas is that there isn't enough of it. Substantial portions of the state have no access to high-speed internet or else very limited capability, and that's hobbling education, economic development, even health care. Now, there has been some progress, and there's the prospect of more. Joining us now to address the issue, State Senator Missy Irvin of Mountain View, Dr. Joseph Sanford of the UAMS Institute for Digital Health, and Mike Preston is Arkansas's Secretary of Commerce. Thanks to all for coming in. Senator, I'll begin with you because you've been a driver of this car so far. The Arkansas plan, well, thank you. The Arkansas plan, as unveiled by the Hutchinson administration, call for nearly complete broadband by 2022. Are we going to make it?
Well, it takes all of our efforts really pulling in the right direction and the same direction. You know, this problem, this issue of broadband, it's really like the new modern day utility. It's just like water and electricity. And it really is the key to robust economic development and growth for rural Arkansas. Arkansas is a rural state, and this really is the game-changing issue that's going to significantly impact Arkansas's future and all of those communities throughout the state. The availability and the access for somebody to have broadband at their home is game-changing. It allows them to have their health care at their home. It allows them to have education at their home, which you know is very important right now in the midst of this pandemic, but also to be able to create a business from their front porch, and entrepreneurship, and also being able to work remotely with clients all across the entire world is really, you know, exciting, and that's what Arkansans want, and that's what they need. So we in state governments need to work tirelessly to pull together all of the resources available to us, which is why you have those other individuals sitting in here with me. We're pulling together all of our available resources at the state level and at the federal level, and creating, you know, kind of this big patchwork quilt, so to speak, on how to get there. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer. It's going to look differently all across the state and in different pockets. There's different technologies that are going to be available to us. So, you know, we're not bound to any one particular technology. We're just really trying to make sure that the problem solvers are in the room and are willing to address this issue and willing to do the work. And we've got to put the dollars towards it as well. So Arkansas Rural Connect, the $125 million to that grant program for the shovel-ready type projects was incredibly important to take advantage of now. And then the Rural ID Broadband program is incredibly important to get to that next level of big-time money that's available at the federal level for the state of Arkansas. You know, Arkansas right now is ranked, I think, 42nd. That changes in access issues, lack of access to broadband for our citizens. And so we have a lot of eligible areas in the state of Arkansas for federal grants and for federal assistance. So the Rural ID Broadband program really is the catalyst to get to those big time dollars. So it's a combination of both of these great, wonderful programs that are housed both at UAMS and at the Department of Commerce with Secretary Preston. And it's really just, we've created kind of this team of folks that are working around the clock just to really put our heads together and create these programs and get the funding there as much as we can.
Well, there's some money standing by. One piece of that quilt that the senator talked about, Secretary Preston, is the ID program, and we've got not some deadlines necessarily, but an opening that is impending here for grants.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Senator.
Go ahead.
I'm
going to pitch to Secretary Preston.
Yeah, Senator, thank you, and Steve, thank you for the question. And I echo Senator Irvin's comments that we've really all come together on this, and it's been a team effort. And certainly a lot of kudos to Senator Irvin and her leadership in the legislature. She's been a tireless advocate for this for many years. What we've seen with the pandemic is it really pushed the need even further as things that we used to do in person, health checkups, health visits, education, these things that went remotely. There was definitely that glaring hole and that gap of the digital divide that we had in Arkansas, and it just put more of a light on it. So we had to get something done, and thanks to the governor and his leadership and the legislature for coming together and advocating for the $125 million going into the broadband program, the Rural Connect program at the Department of Commerce. Yeah, Steve, you're right. We are up against some deadlines based on the guidance from the federal government. We have until the end of the calendar year to have these funds spent. So we're working very quickly for those shovel-ready projects that the Senator alluded to get broadband deployed in those areas that don't have it. That, coupled with the Rural ID program that Senator Irvin and her folks are working on, that's going to lead us to those applications for additional funds coming down from the federal government, is really going to help us close that gap that we currently have in being 42nd and raise us to where we need to be. Does it get the entire state broadband? You know, it's going to take a long time before we get there, but this is certainly moving us in a path that we've never really been on before in an accelerated pace. So I'm excited by just how fast we've gotten these awards out, and we're at almost to October now. We've only got a couple months to go. So to all those communities out there who have those projects ready to go, get your applications in and we'll get them turned around very quickly.
Well, the wheels can grind slowly, Mr. Secretary. So is it possible that some of that money, if not allocated by 12/31, is there a possibility of a carry forward?
We certainly hope so. And we've talked extensively with our congressional delegation. Senator Bozeman, Senator Cotton have been champions for this, and Congressman Hill in the House has really carried the water on this to make sure that we can get an extension on the funds used for broadband, because in some cases, it's just not going to be able to work. 2 months to get broadband deployed out, and just buying the equipment and doing the work is going to take a significant amount of time. So we're hopeful that Congress will come together with some type of relief on the language in the CARES Act that's going to give us that flexibility we need to carry these into the next year. So we're very hopeful that happens, but we can't sit around and wait for that to mature. We have to move forward as if these funds are going to go away at the end of the year. So the team is moving quickly, but we certainly hope that relief is coming.
To Dr. Sanford now, the issue of broadband in an era in a pandemic era would certainly seem to emphasize the need for not only the service itself, but for the speed in attaining it in those areas that don't already have it. But the question goes beyond. Let's say there's a magic vaccine tomorrow. Telemedicine is going to be an increasingly important part of life, it would appear, in rural Arkansas.
Absolutely. I think, with the response to the pandemic and the kind of most appropriate initial thing we knew to do is provide that physical distancing to mitigate the spread. We saw data come nationally that mirrored what we had in Arkansas of less than 1% of primary care visits were done by telemedicine. At the height of the pandemic, that number was as much as 40% for us. And I think that what we've learned about that and what we can offer patients and their families, and then partners with critical access hospitals and other referring physicians, is a web of partnership in depth when it comes to patient continuity of care and access to both primary care and specialty care. We can certainly have this in a telephone call. I mean, there is such a thing as still a telephone consult, but adding the extra bandwidth by these programs gives the opportunity for a high quality, high speed, bidirectional interface that allows us to add on additional services like remote patient monitoring, even software as a prescription for certain diseases such as depression.
Well, but to follow through on that, Doctor, you say it rose to 40% in this current era. With rural Arkansas, fewer and fewer people are choosing farm life and rural life. The rural parts of the state continue to lose population at a significant rate. So in the future, to get primary care, even primary care into rural Arkansas, this is less, by no stretch of the imagination, it would appear. Is this a luxury, broadband?
No, I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's a utility and a necessity. We're seeing a lot of social commentary and potentially even movement back to a more rural environment. And I think that with the opportunities broadband provides, not just on the healthcare front, but educationally, economically, you can live the lifestyle you want to live in the community you want to live in while still having access to incredibly high quality services.
Secretary Preston, there's the point. You can't develop rural Arkansas economically without broadband.
No, that's absolutely. It's an impediment to us when we're doing economic development. a lot of times when you're recruiting companies from other parts of the country and around the world, it's almost just a foregone conclusion that, yeah, broadband access is already there. And companies are surprised to learn that, oh, there's not access in certain parts that we're taking you to. That's a deal breaker for companies. So if we don't have that access to rural broadband, it's going to be very difficult for us to recruit new business and new industry into parts of Arkansas. So this is a critical need. So not only for the areas we talked about before related to education and healthcare, but for economic development and the growth of our state.
Well, Senator Irvin, let me go back to you. We've got about a minute and a half remaining, Senator, and I'll give it to you. What would you have the administration and your colleagues in the General Assembly do come January? What is left for the state to do at this point?
Well, it really started in 2017 when we passed groundbreaking legislation to really deregulate what we had existing on the books. So I champion, my Republican Women Legislative Caucus members for taking this issue on and really talking about it strongly and passionately because, we are business owners. We are moms who need our kids to be able to do their homework at home and not in a McDonald's parking lot for free Wi-Fi. We are concerned about our rural communities and where we live. And so we're going to continue this conversation and make sure, I think the law that we changed is on the books is a good one. And I want to shout out to all of the partners out there that are working around the clock that are partnering with us. We've got a lot of big time, internet service providers, medium size and small size internet service providers all across the state that are jumping in and willing and ready to work and help. So I really want to applaud their efforts for going after those USDA grants, those FCC grants, and then also the Arkansas Rural Connect and the Rural ID grant program. They're going after those dollars, and they understand how important it is to the legislature. So we need to use our bullhorn really loudly and make sure that our cities and our counties are taking full advantage of these opportunities before them at both the state and federal level, and then continue to look if we need to adjust legislation if necessary to make sure that we have that accessibility. But right now, I think we're good with the work that we did in the 2017 session under Senator Davis and Representative Vaught.
And have to end it there because we're simply out of time. Senator, Mr. Secretary, Doctor, thank you all very much for being part of the broadcast.
Thank you for having us.
And as always, we thank you for watching. Now wash your hands, socially distance, and we'll see you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.